In the restless heart of Accra, where the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, a crowd began to gather in Freedom Square. Music floated in the air, drums beating in the distance, vendors calling out their last sales of roasted maize, and the voices of young men laughing near the taxis lined at the corner. Among the crowd stood Quame, a tall black African man in his mid-20s, dressed in a crisp white shirt lined with kente print details on the collar and cuffs, paired with dark jeans and clean sneakers. His palms were damp, though he tried to hide it. Today wasn't just another evening. Today his phone, camera held up by a friend's tripod, was pointed straight at him, ready to capture what he believed would be the most important moment of his life. Beside the fountain in the square stood Amma, radiant as the fading sunlight kissed her deep brown skin. She wore a flowing Ankara gown patterned with bright yellow and emerald green, gold hoops dangling from her ears, and her long African braids tied back with a scarf that fluttered in the evening breeze. She didn't know why Quame had been insisting she meet him here of all places, in front of so many people. She thought it would be a simple walk, a conversation, perhaps dinner after. But she could already feel the weight of every pair of eyes drifting toward her, every whisper floating past as Quame shifted nervously and adjusted the microphone clip to his shirt. "Are you ready, bro?" whispered his friend Malik from behind the camera, another black African young man in a red streetwear hoodie. Quame nodded sharply. Exhaling. His heart pounded, his lips stretched into a smile that he hoped looked confident. This was it, the perfect moment, the proposal he had imagined 100 times, rehearsed in front of the mirror and timed perfectly for social media clout. He wanted not just Amma, but the whole world to see how much he loved her. He wanted this video to spread like fire. "Ladies and gentlemen." Quame's voice boomed louder than he expected, echoing through the square. The drummers nearby slowed their rhythm, vendors paused their calls, and slowly, heads began to turn. A hush fell over the space as Quame dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Amma froze, her lips parting, her eyes wide. "From the day I first saw you, Amma," Quame began, his words shaking, but loud enough for the crowd to hear, "I knew my life would never be the same. You are the light that wakes me each morning, the voice that steadies me when life gets hard. I cannot imagine a future that doesn't have you at its heart. So here, before our friends, our neighbors, and everyone watching today, I ask you." He flicked the box open. Inside, a gleaming gold ring caught the last rays of sunlight. The crowd gasped in unison, claps erupting, whistles rising above the silence. Mobile phones lifted high as strangers began recording, faces glowing with anticipation. "Amma," he said, tears threatening to blur his vision, "will you marry me?" For a moment, the world stood still. Amma's eyes darted to the ring, then to Quame's trembling hands, then to the sea of strangers waiting eagerly. She could hear the buzz of phones live streaming, Malik's camera light blinking red, capturing every twitch of her face. Her chest rose and fell as though the air around her had thickened. She had dreamt of being loved, of being cherished, but never like this, never in the form of a public spectacle. The crowd chanted, "Say yes, say yes." A little girl in a bright patterned dress tugged at her mother's sleeve, eyes wide with excitement. Some clapped, others whistled, all waiting for the perfect fairy tale ending. But Amma's heart raced with a storm of emotions: love, fear, confusion, and something darker she couldn't name. Quame's smile faltered as he noticed the hesitation in her eyes. His plan had been so perfect in his head, the applause, the hugs, the viral moment. But here, before him, Amma's lips trembled, her brows furrowed, and the glow in her eyes dimmed. She didn't step forward, didn't reach for his hand. Instead, silence stretched heavy, suffocating, louder than any drumbeat. The camera zoomed closer, capturing Amma's every breath. Strangers leaned in. The fountain gushed behind her. but even its roar felt faint compared to the pounding of her heart. Amma finally whispered, "Quaim, why here? Why now? Why like this?" Her words, though soft, struck him like thunder. The crowd murmured, confusion flickering across faces. Quaim's throat tightened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had imagined tears of joy, Amma throwing her arms around him, the crowd erupting. But instead, her question hung in the air, echoing in the silence. He forced a smile. "Because I love you, Amma. Because the world deserves to see it too." Amma's eyes glistened. Her hands trembled at her sides. She wanted to believe him, wanted to melt into his arms, but deep inside, something felt wrong. She could feel hundreds of eyes piercing her, the weight of strangers demanding her choice, her privacy stolen by flashing cameras. She began, voice cracking. KWME leaned forward, desperate. "Say it, Amma. Please." The square erupted again. "Say yes. Say yes." The chant grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. Amma's chest tightened, her vision blurring as tears welled up. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just a proposal. This was a performance, staged not only for her heart but for likes, for comments, for endless views that would brand her answer forever across the internet. She turned her face away, breathing hard. The crowd gasped, sensing the tension. Malik's camera kept rolling, eyes wide with shock at the way the moment was unfolding. And then Amma looked back at Quaim, her tears catching the last light of the setting sun. Her lips parted, but instead of the joyful yes the world was waiting for, what she whispered left the entire square frozen in silence. Amma's voice trembled as the words slipped from her lips, not the joyful yes the crowd had expected, but a quiet and steady, "Quaim, I can't do this." And instantly the square fell into stunned silence, the chants of "say yes" dying on tongues as hundreds of eyes widened in disbelief, the fountain roaring louder than before. The blinking camera light still rolling as Malik's hand shook behind the lens, and Quaim's heart stopped in his chest, his smile collapsing as though the world itself had betrayed him. His knee pressed against the cold stone ground while Amma's tears glistened beneath the fading sun, her breath catching as she forced herself to explain, "Quaim, marriage is sacred. Love is not a performance. You brought me here not for me but for them, for the views, the clout, the strangers who don't know our hearts." And murmurs rippled through the crowd, some gasping, others whispering, a few shaking their heads as Quaim staggered, choking on words, "No, Amma, I love you. I did this because I wanted everyone to see how serious I am." But Amma shook her head, the fabric of her Ankara gown swaying in the breeze as she whispered back, "If you truly loved me, you would have asked me in private. You would have given me space to breathe, to feel, to decide, not trap me in the eyes of the world." And her voice cracked as she lifted her face to the crowd and said, "Love is not a show for the internet," her words slicing through the night air like thunder. And the crowd that once cheered now grew restless, some lowering their phones, others murmuring in shame. Because what was supposed to be a fairy tale now stood naked as a tragedy, and Quaim's hand trembled as he held out the ring. Desperate. "Amma, don't do this, not here, not like this. I thought you wanted forever with me." And Amma's tears spilled as she whispered, "I do want love, Quaim, but not this kind of love. Not love that begins with pressure and ends with clout." And she turned, stepping back, her golden earrings catching the glow of street lamps as gasps followed her retreat. Quaim collapsing fully to the ground as the crowd parted like waves around Amma, her figure fading into the city streets, her gown a flutter of yellow and green swallowed by the night, and Malik's camera still pointed at Quaim, the red light blinking, recording every painful second as Quaim buried his face in his hands, the weight of humiliation pressing on his shoulders. Strangers whispering, "This will be everywhere by tomorrow." And indeed, by the time the sun rose again, the video had exploded across every platform. The clip replayed endlessly of Amma whispering, "I can't do this," and turning away. Headlines screaming, "Public proposal gone wrong in Accra, and she said no in front of the world." Memes flooding timelines, commentary split between those praising Amma's courage to refuse a staged performance and those mocking Quaim for turning love into content, and while millions laughed or debated, Quaim sat alone in his small apartment, his white shirt crumpled, his phone buzzing nonstop with notifications he could not bear to open, replaying the moment again and again in his head, wondering how love that felt so certain in his heart had turned into heartbreak on the internet, while Amma, in her room lit only by a single lantern, sat on her bed still in her Ankara gown, her braids damp from tears, clutching her chest as she whispered to herself, "Love must be real, not recorded." And though her answer had broken the internet, deep down she hoped it would teach Quaim and anyone watching that love was never meant to be measured in likes, shares, or clout, but in truth, patience, and intimacy, and so the story of a proposal meant to go viral became instead a cautionary tale whispered across Africa and beyond, that when love is turned into a stage play for the world, sometimes the loudest applause comes from silence, and sometimes the bravest answer is the one no one expects.